I was 19. Then I put a picture of me beating Borzov, and then I gave a short history. And it was so poignant to me is because this was 1973.
Yeah.
I was in the Soviet Union, but 10 years earlier, in 1963, I was hiding under my desk in the Bronx elementary school over the nuclear threat. You remember that, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so I had the hots for the Russians like you wouldn't believe. Okay.
Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew 𝐒𝐭𝐞𝐯𝐞.
Today on the podcast, we're out in California. You don't always get to say, I'm talking to someone who was the fastest human alive. But today we're going to do that. Somebody who grew up in the Bronx, had to have braces put on his legs, overcame all this stuff, was a lively kid, has written a book called Always Speeding. We'll talk about that. But we'll talk about him from New York to Texas to California to Florida to Russia, all over the world, being the fastest guy in the world. He bridged in those 70s the turning point in the sport where it became possible for people to make it a career, to go from amateurism, which sometimes he calls shamateurism, into professional career athletes. So he knows everybody in sprinting. He knows everybody in track, including the field guys who he has relationships with and coordinated with all through this tumultuous period. It is so fun to talk today. Welcome, Steve Williams.
Thanks, Matt, for having me.
Steve, let's start at the very beginning and talk about you growing up and first getting into sports in the Bronx.
I was raised in the Bronx. I was born with two handicaps. I was extremely pigeon-toed, and I had asthma. My mother had my ankles broken when I was 4 months old, and it was embarrassing to her to have me in the cradle, pushing me through the streets with two broken legs. After I took them off, 4 or 5 months later, I almost stood up immediately. I was banging the cast up against the wall, up against the crib, and so I had gotten some leg strength. I was always fast. The title of my book is Always Speeding because I was such super hyperactive child. And at 72 years old, when we get to talking, you'll still see I'm still always speeding. I'm quite a hyper guy. I lived a block and a half away from one of the toughest projects in New York, Eden Wall Projects. I went to kindergarten in the projects. One of my first running remembrances was I was in kindergarten and I was running across the schoolyard and I was running with some of the other kids. Later on, one of them became the head of the toughest gang in the Bronx. And no matter what happened, anytime he saw me, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, Steve, get your guys out of here before something happens. So track has always been an opening for me from day one.
You had a junior high coach who was with the police athletic league and a lot of meets. You ran a lot of races before you got to high school?
I was running the PAL, which is the police athletic league, where they pretty much block off the street. They bring out a scale. Everybody runs by their weight. I have one of my numbers in my book that has me 75 pounds. Okay. One of the policemen, and Mr. Clark, said, you can do this. He put his hand on my shoulder, and I was somewhat anointed to do it. When I was in elementary school, 8, 9 years old, I was in the park, and we were running our first race as kids in lanes. So I'm standing around the park director, Mr. Magliari, God bless his soul, and we're 8 years old, 9 years old, we're looking up at him and we say, what do we do? Because we're running in lanes for the first time. He said, number one, stay in your lane. And then he don't know what to say, and he says, don't let any kid be in front of you at the finish. So that was, For the rest of my life, if you see me run, I got that hyperactive toward the finish line. And so it was just almost a mantra from that age.
What'd you have on your feet? You're a kid growing up in the projects. Everybody's got basketball shoes, whatever. What do you think you were wearing?
I was wearing these black canvas shoes that had a stripe or two on it, but I also had a problem was because after I had my operation on my feet, I had to wear special shoes. There's this company, kids company, Buster Brown, that makes these tailor-made shoes. My mother had to spend a fair amount of money to have me had tailor-made shoes. I wasn't even allowed to wear slip-on shoes until I went to college.
Oh my gosh. So did you run in Buster Brown's?
No, but whatever the sneakers were at the time,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Then something about your stride came up. In high school, you had an indoor track in the gym, but you run up and down the halls instead.
If you're on the East Coast with the bad weather, high school, we had one of these upper tracks around the basketball court, and it was rather dangerous, this roller derby kind of feeling. But aside from that, we were running up and down the hallways. When the classes changed, we had to stop. If some kid was straggling, we wound up bumping into kids running up and down the steps. Oh, it was quite exciting. My high school was dangerous. My high school, Evander Childs High School in the Bronx, we had been banned from playing football for 2 years. I came to school just when the football team came back. We had overdoses in my school. We had all kind of crime. This was when the heroin epidemic was very big in New York. We lost people from that. But track saved me. Track moved me through everything. My high school coach, Mr. Marshall, he's a mensch, my Hebrew godfather. He didn't know, he wasn't much of a track man, but he was a promoter. He taught me to go in there and promote. One of his favorite lines was, "All right, Steve, go in there and shoot the shit. Shoot the shit." Go in there and say
Look,
something.
there's a lot public find on the internet of your high school accomplishments. So what was the progression there that got schools interested in you, and how did recruiting happen back then?
My high school coach, he wanted us to go Ivy League. I was Bronx champ in the 200. I had also triple jump. I was a 400-meter specialist. I wasn't a sprinter. And then my last year of high school, I wound up running fairly well, and I went to all the Ivy League schools. I had a trip to Princeton, Yale, Columbia, and then my grades wasn't good enough. Oddly enough, one of my favorite stories, during the recruitment time, I took a trip down to Princeton. Larry Ellis, who was Bob Beamer's coach, the first black coach at an Ivy League school, he tried to recruit me. Lovely trip down to Princeton. I fell in love with Princeton. I knew I didn't have the grades. A year later, he said, "Steve, if I had known you were that fast, I would have fixed your grades and got you into Princeton."
Yeah. What kind of student were you in high school? Were you struggling? Was it just attention? What was it?
There was so much distractions
Yeah.
in Bronx life, and track saved me. Track kept me out of the trouble. As I said, I was half a block away from the projects. My family was in a private home. There was drugs, there was shootings. It's a story within itself, okay? See any of these movies, American Gangster, or about the drug dealing at that time, that was all around me all the time. I became obsessed with the running. It was me. I didn't run, I was a runner. I was a sprinter, and that saved me. My last year in Penn Relays, my school, I was so far behind as the anchor man all the time, it was embarrassing. But in the Penn Relays in 1971, I was running the anchor leg, and I just said, let me just run pretty because we were so far behind. The coach at the University of Texas, El Paso, Wayne Vandenberg, he recognized something in me. He said, "You're the new Tommy Smith." He said, "You're skinny, you run the quarter, blah, blah, blah." I accepted to go to El Paso, but this was in May. The school season ended. I got second in the Eastern State Championship behind my buddy Harold Williams, and we went to go run the Junior Olympics. So this was like the first time I was allowed to really run the 100. My second time I ran the 100, I ran 9.6. And then the third time I ran the 100, I ran 9.4, which was the New York State record for about 4 or 5 years.
And that's after UTEP already offered you a scholarship, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
On to the Junior Olympics. Harold won the 100, I won the 400, and then both of us went to El Paso as the Williams boys, and it was a beautiful situation. I got there. Coach Vandenberg had an international team of athletes, great sprinters, Harrison, J.J. Jackson, Mike Frey from Jamaica, Charlie Joseph from Trinidad, my good friend Chris Goppenborg from Sweden. We had a very international group. But what's the most important thing to me was good weather. Okay.
How much had you traveled before you went to UTEP? How much around?
No. The first trip on a plane was to the Junior Olympics regional meet in Buffalo, New York, and then the U.S. Air Force Academy for the Junior Olympic finals. And then I'm off to El Paso, wake up in the desert. Luckily, I had Harold Williams and a friend of mine, Derek, and another friend of mine, a triple jumper, Trevor Hall. So we had a New York nucleus that got us through. But it was a culture shock, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It was a culture
Well,
shock.
I want to ask you about the transition. This is the stuff that, a lot of people are interested in. You got to transition to living away from home. You're going to eat in the cafeteria. You're going to do a different coach. Good, bad, or indifferent, you got a different coach. You got a way different approach to academics, and you got a 2.0 or you don't compete. So how did all that transition go your first semester or two?
I wanted to be an English major when I came there because I was writing in English. My SAT score was like I got 800, it seems like, on the writing, and maybe 300 on the math. You get 300 on math, just signing your name. Okay, so math was in my strong suit. When I got there, Coach Vandenberg was just a great mentor, a great businessman. He made sure we all was in the PE department so he could control the grades. He was a very progressive coach as far as being a professional, making the money. He was pushing to move the sports forward. Later on, Coach Vandenberg was one of the original investors in the ITA, the International Track Association, which was the first and last attempt really to do pro track.
Wow.
So,
until this last summer's crash with Mike.
We'll get to that later on.
Okay. UTEP took a guy from where I was from, Western Pennsylvania. He took a guy from Allegheny Community College. The African guys.
Yes.
Well, down UTEP became a distance boom then too. What about goal setting? We know you got through phys ed, you got another mentor, guy's going to help guide you and keep some guardrails up. What about your goal setting? What was possible to you by freshman? What were you thinking is going to happen?
We had 6 sprinters. 2 of them were from a junior college. And I was the designated 400-200 man. I was Tommy Smith of the team, okay? Yeah. That's where I was. That's my niche. The other guys were the sprinters, stronger, more powerful guys. J.J. Jackson was like a bull. I was training with Mike Frey, who was 6'3". He taught me to run big. Mike Frey from Jamaica taught me, he says, you run big, you run tall, you stand up, and you're in the seat. High knees and everything. So all I was trying to do was make the relay team. 2 guys failed off of the team, so I wound up being able to run the 100. The first time trial at the end of the first year, in 1971, It was beautiful. In December, it's 90 degrees. I lost my mind. I almost overtrained. Most people will say, yeah, you might have. They let me run the 100 in a time trial, and I ran 9.2 win-aided. Beat everybody. Then I ran the 220 and 6. Beat everybody. Ran the mile relay, ran 46.1. So I was a 3-event sprinter, and because it's the other guys failing, I wind up being up in the relay.
What leg were you running at the beginning for UTEP?
I was a second leg. Which later on was very helpful because I knew both ends of the stick passing, the baton exchange. And Coach Vandenberg was a stickler for good baton passing, those fundamentals that, I hate to say, our current guys seem to fell asleep at that part of the track and field syllabus about how.
If everybody doesn't remember, USA has been the worst in the world at the 4x1 exchanges for about 6-8 years. Yeah.
I can't even watch it on TV and have a drink in my hand without spitting it out or throwing something at the TV. It's embarrassing. So I ran second leg. Noteworthy meets. We had a meet against Oklahoma State. They had some really buffed, corn-fed white guys. Everybody was 46-second quarter milers. I ran 45.7 and won the race. That was my school record and freshman record. And so everybody was like, wow, 45. So I was a quarter miler. The next came up, we had to run at Penn Relays against North Carolina Central with Larry Black and Sang and Uku and my friend Charles Foster. Then I was given the responsibility to anchor 200, 4x2 and 4x4. I was 18 years old in Penn Relays, the mecca, especially from an East Coast kid. And I begged Coach Vandenberg, let me run the 100. Let me run the 100 also. He said, okay. I was anchoring the 4x2. We were about 8 yards behind. Larry Black wound up being silver medalist later on that year. And I caught him in the first 60. And he powered away from me in the last 40, right? And I had never had anybody really power away from me at the time. So it was a lesson. I had run 45.7 in the qualifying rounds in the mile relay, and I was supposed to anchor the relay, Penn Relay, but one of our guys got hurt. I was so happy to sit in the stands as Larry Black ran 43.7
Yeah.
the leg. And I was so happy to be sitting up in the stands. After that, we had a dual meet against USC, which was supposedly one of the greatest sprint dual meets ever. I first got to see Don Quarry. I had seen Don when I was in high school on TV. When I used to practice by myself, I used to focus on the guys who were the top guys. I used to focus on Quarry, Willie Deckett. In my mind, my mental rehearsal with those guys was deadly. They had no idea. No one saw me. I was 6'3". I was 165 pounds, 170 pounds. I didn't look like a sprinter at all. And I won the 100. And I beat Quarry in the 200. He passed me on the curve, and I knew he thought it was over. And I came and got him, and it was a shock. I ran 20-2 and 9.4 that day, so I was off to the races. Next thing,
I gotta ask, was OJ in that meet?
No, this was 71. OJ in like 70. He was already balls.
Right.
But of course, I was a fan of OJ, and of course, all of the SC reputation, McCullough.
They set the 4x1 world record, yeah.
World record. And so after that meet, I became national. Everybody knew, people started knowing who I was. Then we had the WAC championship meet, and I pretty much was running too much. I ran 20.2 in the heats, and the 400 was 2 or 3 hours later. I was in a panic. I didn't know what to do. Big qualified quarter milers like Maurice Peoples from Arizona State. I got stuck in lane 2. I'm like, okay. So in my mind, I had never really conquered how to run the 400. I would go out too fast and die. I would lay back too far and have to catch up. I never really, to this day, out of the starting blocks, me and the 400 just, people don't realize when you get down on your hands for a 400 in the blocks, it's okay. There's the now and the right now, okay? And it's the right now when the gun goes off. I was so far behind in the first part of this 400 at the WAC championship. Maurice People with his big afro was running free in the outside lane. Coach Vandenberg runs across the track and screams at me, "What the hell are you doing?" And that woke me up. So I caught everybody and I wind up running 44.9, passing the 400 part, and 45.2 at the 440-yard mark, which was the under 20 world record at the time.
Ah, wow.
Okay. The next day, I was running the 200 and pulled my hamstring. Just, if I was to say what I miss about my career that is happening now and in the future of the sport, was one, better sports medicine, and two, making a couple of bucks so you could pay for that sports medicine if you had to.
Yeah.
So
in your book, you talk about rest is non-negotiable, and that wasn't the way even a lot of distance runners looked at it. They're just like, if I'm not working, somebody else is working.
The volume, you had to be out there. So 72, I'm heartbroken, I'm pulled muscle. Borzov goes and wins the 100 and the 200. Eddie Hart and my dearest friend Ray Robinson missed the race. I had lost the 100 to Ray Robinson at the Penn Relays in a photo finish, so I was upset. I said, I believe I could beat Ray. He always gets mad when I say that. Ray, if you're listening, I still love you. But it was heartbreaking. I didn't even watch the Olympics. And then when the terrorist attack happened and it became embroiled in that, and then the concerns that it was manipulated, that Eddie Hart and Ray might have missed it due to some shenanigans, and then Larry Black getting put in lane 1 while Borzov was running free in lane 6. There was this kind of thing about it. So Borzov became my immediate target. Added to the story I was telling you about, that as a kid during the 60s, we were hiding under our desks under the Russian threat. So you add that, then I thought they cheated my friends, Eddie and Ray. And then I gotta be honest, I'm from the Bronx. My uncle played for the Negro League, and we was like, don't let no white guys beat you at nothing.
What was Borzov like when you were on the track with him before a run? Because he's a big politician now.
Yes, everything I had against him and everything I left the Bronx with to go around the world softened me, changed me. I was raised in the 60s. In my book, I write what happened when Martin Luther King got killed and how my neighborhood erupted in riots. And I used to be down in Harlem with them at the mosque with Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad. Then I used to train with the New York Pioneer Club, and we trained in the 368th Street Armory, which was the Hellfire Armory. Then I used to train, when I was 15, I was doing repeat 200s with John Carlos after the 68. And then I was with Bob Beamon. I knew Bob Beamon went out with my cousin. So I was raised with track royalty in New York. And I was raised as a serious revolutionary kid from the 60s with Carlos, Tommy, and Bob Beamon. When it came to Borzov and I, we first met moving ahead. So 73, I came back to college. Coach Vandenberg said, only 400s, only 200s, no sprinting for you. You spread out too much. That's how you got injured. So I'm training for the 400. Then college, we had a Thanksgiving break. I drove to Chicago in my first car to see my girlfriend. Came back, Coach Vandenberg got fired. He got,
Oh,
and there was no reason for me to stay in the desert. USC's coach, Ken Matsuda, God rest his soul too, he tried to recruit us, me and Harold Williams, to come to USC. El Paso has fiddled with our grades, so our grades weren't good enough. We're in LA staying at the Puma representative, Art Simberg. Art Simberg says, I'll help y'all get into college. Art Simberg was married to Wyoming Tyus, Olympic champion. They talk about FloJo and all those. Wyoming had done what they had even thought to do in the 60s.
Yeah.
Wyoming had all these Puma equipment. We were getting shoes. They had that brush shoe that was banned in 1968. They had piles of them in the garage, so we got piles of brush shoes. We had all kind of stuff. Coach Dick Hill, who came from Louisiana, and he was Bob Hayes' coach and Rod Milburn's coach, he became the head coach of San Diego State. We headed down there for a nice soft landing.
what was the rule for sitting out when you changed schools?
First year, 73, you can't compete for the school.
Okay.
So I'm running with the San Diego Track Club with my brother forever, Wes Williams, and I had Arnie Robinson as my strength coach. And just the two of them molded me. They used to say, we're going to the beach. We work out, we're going to the beach. First time I laid barefoot on the beach, I had that magical sensation. They say that gravitational pull when you're barefoot in grass or beach, it hit me like a spark. We used to run a mile and a half next to the water and repeat 60-yard dashes in the soft sand. And I was doing that, and I had not really put much sprint training in. I was a quarter miler. For the San Diego Track Club, I ran 45 seconds every time we had a relay leg. But then I started to run the 100. My first 100 at the Coliseum, a Vaughn's meet given by the great Al Franken, who was the premier meet promoter of our time. First person to ever hand me any money, so you know I loved him. And I ran 9.6 into a strong headwind. Next meet was Fresno, West Coast Relays. We had some problems where we didn't get our entry in time. I was in the substitute. Maybe I'll get to run, maybe I didn't. One of my partners had gotten the flu, and we're staying in a room together. I had walking pneumonia.
Yeah.
I get to the track. We've got world record holder in the 60, Herb Washington, Willie Deckard. We got Quarry. We got the SC guys again. And so in the qualifying rounds, because I was kind of upset, I run 9.1, equal world record in the qualifying rounds with a little win. And then in the finals, one of the quickest guys ever is Herb Washington. Herb Washington, you blink, and he's 5 yards ahead of you. He had that jackrabbit speed. There's power speed, and then there's, but Herb was like, ding, he's gone. And things started happening to me only in the 100 that didn't happen to me in the other races. Was I would get an adrenaline rush. It would just hit me, and everything would go into slow motion. That sensation that happens, I describe it to people if you're ever in a car accident, and everything just slows down. And the discussion and the study of adrenaline, there's only two things that create adrenaline in the human body: fear and anger. Okay, so that became, I enter into the track, what's it gonna be today? Later on in life, my whole career, step into 80,000 people in the stadium screaming for somebody else, I'm afraid. Or I'm angry, I'm gonna kill everybody today. So it was that thing. So Herb, I really wanted to get Herb, and so I caught him at the tape, world record. I'm 19 years old. It was age group record, it was world record, and after that, I was really on being seen a lot.
What happens in your head when you're like, I just ran as fast as Bob Hayes and world record? What happens to you?
And Carlos, and it was a pretty heady bunch. I was more into the sensation. Forget them. Forget that I had broke their record. It was that it was an achievement and a sensation. It was an out-of-body experience. I turned around and looked. I messed up running 9 flat that day. Everybody who saw it said, wow, what you gonna do next? So later on that year, I won the Nationals, the 100 and the 200, which hadn't been done since Ray Norton in the 60s. I was 19, and to this day, I was the youngest double champion in the national championship.
Yeah. That was a good year. That was a good year you had. That year and the next year, man.
So we qualified for the USA versus the World Tour. It was fantastic. I'm on an airplane with all these great stars. I'm with Dwight. I'm with Al Feuerbach, Wall Hooter. Luckily, I had Arnie Robinson there to hold my hand through it. And on the plane, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to run all the time. I'm going to pick and choose. I had gotten that coaching on how to maybe make this professional. They want to see you, Steve. What do you do? So in Germany, and we were in USA, Germany, in Munich Olympic Stadium, which was an out-of-body experience to be there in 1973 and missing it in 72. I won the 100 there pretty easy. I ran the relay. Next was Italy with Pietro Manea. I get to Italy. I'm not even aware of the national hero fervor in Europe. And so they don't love us in America. They worship them in Europe.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So they put me in my own private room so the press could get to me. I'm like, I got a suite? Every rest of the team's, how come I got a suite? The press is on me. They're talking about Pietro. He's this, he's that. They're talking about Borzov. They're almost like trying to scare me. Pretty much they just made me angry. And I'm from the Bronx. We'd had that friction with the Italians, you know what I mean? You know, we had that friction with the Italians as kids. So it was like, hey, he was no paisan until later years, right? So I step into the stadium, 70,000 people in Torino, screaming his name over and over. Manea, Manea, Manea. 70,000 people. I'm talking about, I was scared shitless. Okay? And so I'm down on my hands, and it's the start. I had to quiet the crowd. I had never experienced this for one guy. There was only 4 of us on the track, and all of this for this guy. I got angry. That choice of fear or anger. They were saying his name so much, I truly had fear. But when I got down on my hands, it became anger. Manea, a great curve runner, picked me up in the first 60 meters. I powered down the track and caught him at the end. Looked back at him. I was a rude boy back then. And the crowd went crazy. The Italians fell in love with me. They felt I had this flair about it. And for the rest of my track life, Italy was a second home.
Nice.
Was USSA Russia. And the hype about Borzov was incredible. He was double Olympic champion. He had run great 200. Okay, I'd run 20 and 1. He'd run 20 flat that year. And then the controversies and all the thing about the Russian doping program, which was pretty much accepted that everybody was dope. So I'm figuring he's dope too, whatever. So I run the 100, and he's going to run the 200, and he's going to run the 200 and the 400, okay? And then he's going to 200 and the 100. And I'm like, he's going to run the relay, and I'm like, okay, I'll run the relay also. So he's running the relay, and we go back and forth, and then he decides that's all he's going to run is the relay. I'm the anchor leg. I figured that we're going to be so far behind, right? we're going to be so far behind in this race that I won't ever see him. Somehow our stick pass got bobbled. I'm like 7 yards behind him. I get that out-of-body experience that just, I can't even tell you. I picked him up in the first 60 yards. I looked over at him, changed the baton, pretty much embarrassed him in his own country. And you asked me how we was personally. I really didn't know the guy. When we did a press conference the day before, I was kind of rude. I came from the Bronx, Rucker tournament basketball, showing off, intimidating guys. We were in a press conference. I'm like standing behind him, growling at him.
Great.
That's our first encounter. And Coach Brooks Johnson, God rest his soul, who was, of course, the preeminent Olympic coach and everything, but this was one of his first tours. The KGB removed me from the track because the crowd was whistling that European booing after I looked at Borzov on the track. Coach Johnson, KGB is moving me to the tunnel. Coach Johnson is running behind. He says, are they going to kidnap me? Okay. Am I going to be in the gulag? Coach Brooks cusses me out. You don't do that. The guy's a national hero in his country. What's wrong with you? And I was like, come on, man. I'm just a kid from the Bronx. I'm just a kid from the Bronx. I'm just running a kid from the Bronx. And I apologize. I came to get him, and that's all it's about. And about that, I said I had that thing from hiding under the desk as a kid, and he was a white guy, and Eddie Hart, and it was just a lot bubbling up inside.
Yeah.
That
I want to ask you something technical here. The baton switch. You didn't always know who was going to be in the relay. You were making it up on this tour, who was going to run which event. And you said maybe we would have made a couple other hundreds and hit 38 flat with the baton switch. What was the practice of the batons and that you did for a meet like that where you were deciding just a couple days before?
That was USA Russia. The baton switch issue comes up later when we ran the world record at Dusseldorf 4 years.
Oh, that was 77.
77.
Right.
The slight controversy that, I switched hands anchoring, which is like not even a millisecond, right?
Hey, two other guys copied you and they did all right.
But if you see, the anchor man pretty much can do what he wants with the stick. And if you see Carl Lewis, if you see Maurice Green, it's almost a comfort thing. It's almost a power thing. You want this baton in your power hand.
Yeah.
So that's where that came. So ending 73, USA Russia, I won the 200. Borzov didn't run at all. And we went to USA Africa, which was a fabulous trip. But USA Africa gave me my first brush up against the AAU. This side of making this thing pro pretty much started in Africa for me, in Senegal, because Italy wanted me back in Europe. After I beat Borzov, everybody wanted me in Europe, but I was forced to go down to Africa. When I went down to Africa, which was the greatest trip of my life, but I was wanted to go back to Italy and pick up some of this money. The head of the Italian Federation, Mr. Barra, gave me his business card right after I had beaten Pietro and said, anytime you want to come to Italy, call me. I'm in Africa, they contact me and want you to come back to Italy. So here I am down in Africa, and I got to get back to Italy. Olin Castle, who we all know, who had this as his little private amateur fiefdom. He was sticking his hand in everybody's pocket. He enriched himself while keeping the sport suppressed. Other folks were afraid to talk about him. I wasn't from the beginning. So at 19 years old, he comes down to the USA Africa meet, first time on the whole tour, and I got to ask him, hey, I need to get flown back to Italy. I asked him to fly me back to Italy. We're standing in a beautiful setting in Africa on the coastline, And he talks to me as if he's some southern sheriff. He got that drawl, and
Yeah.
we're both tall guys. We're looking eyeball to eyeball. And he said, "You'll go back with the rest of the team, and if you want to go to Italy, that's up to you. But you're just going to go and do what I say." Oh, from that time on, it was on between me and the AAU. It was against him personally, but it was also against him who was managing this unfair system. A kid from the 60s, talking to in that southern attitude really rubbed me the wrong way. So I said, the only thing I know to do is boycott. So I said, I'm not going to run anything. Fine. If that's your attitude, I'll sit this one out. I learned the power of sitting these things out. I told him I'll sit it out. I had met a lovely family, a beautiful girl, and then Brooks was saying, "Steve, look, I'll pay for you to go back, but please run." I said, "No." Doc Walker was the coach. He was saying, "Steve, this is good for Pan-Africanism. This is good for black people in America. This is very important. They love you here. You beat Borzov and the Europeans. They love you. You got to run." So I agreed. I ran one race. Looking back, I should have run 100 and 200, but against Olin Castle, I had to do something.
Yeah. Was Dwight Stones yet on the team on that trip?
There, but Stones didn't see. This was part of the catch-22 of this all. Pacific Coast Club with Al Feuerbach and Stones were allowed to leave the Russian meet and go to Europe, while I was forced to go to.
Wow.
So that set me up even more as far as being upset. I ran the race. When I get to the airport, my ticket is there, paid by the U, so I said I won that battle. I went to Europe, ran 2 track meets, came back, and the season was pretty much over. October, I get an invitation to go down to Jamaica. USA was going to Jamaica for the Prime Minister at the time, Michael Manley of Jamaica, was having a memorial meet for his daddy, Norman Manley. So they invited the USA team. That's October. I'm like, I want to go to Jamaica. Me and my buddy Jimmy Red, we said, we go to Jamaica. Get off the plane. There's a big poster of me and Don Quarry. Like,
Yeah.
oh, man, I done walked into a trap. One of my guys at El Paso, Mike Frey, was Jamaican. He's down there. He picks me up at the hotel. He takes me up in the hills with the Rastas. I don't even want to tell you about the Rasta religion. And I'm from New York, so I had to make sure that they knew I was no boomba clot. That I was okay. And so Mike says to me, "Steve, how much you getting paid to run here?" I'm like, "Nothing. I'm here with the AAU." He said, "Are you kidding? They've been setting this up for 2 months. You've been running in Europe. Quarry been resting to get you. This has been a big thing over the whole island." I said, "Aha." So I says, "I'm just going to run the 100. I'm not going to run the 200 because that's what the big hype is about." This is one of my favorite stories. I'm warming up on the track. They got that velodrome around the National Stadium. I'm warming up. And 4 military police come and get me off the track. And walk
You and the police, you and the Secret Service.
between the KGB worrying about that. They were grabbing me up for something. So they walk me up. National Stadium has these big steps. They walk me up to the Prime Minister's skybox. I open the door, the air conditioning hit me, and there's Michael Manley, perfect gray hair, blue political suit. He reaches his hand out, shakes my hand, and he immediately starts sounding like a politician. "I hear that you're not going to run the 200 meters against our guy, Don Quarry." And I said, "I apologize, sir. It's October, long season. I just started school." He says, "Is there anything we can do easier for you to run this 200? So here it is. Mike Frey, the night before, told me to ask for $5,000. The most I had made it was in Italy was $1,000. Mike said, ask for $5,000. I'm like, So the prime minister has me by the hand. I'm getting ready to lean in to give him a number. A Chinese guy, one of the assistants, jumps in the middle, says, we'll handle that. The prime minister shakes my hand, says, we'll postpone it to 200, it's a little bit longer so you can get a good warm-up. Shakes my hand. Chinese guy's walking me down the steps. The whole stadium sees me walking up to the prime minister's skybox. They're looking at me like, what's going to happen? I run the 200, I probably run 20.9 if I broke 20 seconds. Got fourth, it was October. Get back to the hotel, go up in the hills with the rosters. Everybody is, oh, don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. So I'm in the hotel. Everybody leaves. The whole USA team's gone. I'm the only one left in the hotel. I'm like, how am I going to collect this money? Where's the Chinese guy who negotiated this thing? I'm in the hotel employees like, everybody's gone. You there? It's a day and a half, everybody's gone. What am I going to do? I'm from the Bronx. I got a bad attitude. Edwin Roberts, a Trinidadian athlete, and a good friend of mine, Byron Dice, a half-miler, told me in Torino one thing: never let them not pay you. If they make a deal, hold them to the deal. So I'm walking around the hotel. I go down, I ask the concierge, I said, where does the prime minister live?
Whoa. Okay.
They tell me Jamaica House. I go upstairs. I always travel with a suit. I put on my black suit. I put my passport and my ticket in the pocket in case I get thrown out the country trying to collect this money. I'm 19 years old, negotiated with the prime minister of a country. You talk about turning pro? I was totally like, oh, this is how it goes. So taxi takes me to Jamaica House. Jamaica House looks like Buckingham Palace, all that British architecture, 2 guard houses. Guys come out dressed in all perfect white with the hats and the shorts, 2 handsome black guys. And what am I going to say? This is at the time I said, oh, now what? So I saw in a James Bond movie that they said that the Queen was in residence. So I walk up to the guy, the guard, and he's stiff. And I says, is the prime minister in residence? What is your business? And I said, look, my name is Steve Williams, and I down here for the track meet. Their personality changed immediately. One of them was like, Boomba Ross, Quarry whoop you like a boy. Oh man, he mash you up. They totally changed. They became the track fan. Both of these guys were rigid.
Yeah.
They was like, the other one came from his post. The 2 of them were just dogging. So they said, get back in the taxi. Go back to the hotel. I go back to the hotel, I start packing. I said, that's that. 20 minutes later, knock on the door. Little Chinese guy comes in livid. You went to the prime minister about me? You went to the prime minister about me? He hands me a bank bag with 2,800 Jamaican dollars, because Jamaican dollar was pretty much like the Canadian dollar back then. And he pretty much grabs me, throws me in a taxi, and I catch the last flight out of Kingston.
Wow.
19 years old.
Wow.
So my whole pro thing was like, I'm not afraid of nobody. I'm going to ask, and if they don't pay, I'm going to do something to get paid. That was it.
About confidence. Confidence, you talked about your upbringing, your personality. You said confidence on the track is earned by the workouts. But there's another level of confidence here in you as a person and your value. How's that all fit together?
New York was no joke. Growing up in New York was no joke. Oh, there was people get shot around the corner from my mother's house. Like I told you, the number one gang member was we running at 6 years old as kids. When I came to El Paso, we were just a great bunch of guys. And I was the baby of the bunch, but later on as my times came down, I became a halfway of a leader. And then when I got to San Diego and I got with Wes Williams, great intermediate hurdler, and Arnie Robinson, an Olympian, I just gotten the camaraderie around me that basically reinforced my inner personality about the thing. And I was deadly about the competing. People know me, they say, oh, Steve is so humble and he's so cool, except when it was time to run. And that was the beauty. I could turn it on. I said, yeah, this is what we do. Like I said earlier, anger, fear, which one? I'm in Jamaica at that time, but after that, I went down to Jamaica and I was the first to run 19.9 to break 20 in the Caribbean. I was the first 9.9 breaking 10 in Italy. I was the first breaking 10 in Germany. I had a lot of firsts because I had Eddie Hart and Ray Robinson career got snuffed out. Bob Hayes, Jim Hines, who I love dearly, they got snuffed out. Nobody had control of the event in the sprints. I had the control of it. I was running the fast times. I was predicting the fast times. I was arguing with the meet promoters. I negotiated with easily 15 meet promoters worldwide. I negotiated on 5 continents. Okay?
Okay, there's a lot more to cover with Steve Williams. We'll be back with more episodes next time. Enjoy.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.